Thank you, chairpersons, and warm greetings. I heartily thank Team Diabetica, Dr. Akash sir, for inviting me today. And I think sir beautifully put up the scenario that we are treating the wrong disease. But as we have been treating the wrong disease, we come up with patients who really require rescue. So my task today is to give you a highlight regarding the rescue operations that we need to make for typically have been taking full dosage of sulfonylureas, metformin, and then after 8 odd years, 9 odd years of getting OHA, when they are introduced with a GLP or for that matter DPP and SGLT2, they are so sick, and basically we are TOFIs. Where TOFIs means the body type that we have is that we are thin, fat inside and thin outside. So typically we need to have some interventions where in these situations we can't just be relying on adding up to the molecules, and give our patients some anabolism so that they can recover and have a good quality of life. So this is a typical case scenario we see day in and out in our clinical practice, where this gentleman, 48 years, a teacher with a very poor lifestyle, coming up into directly stage CKD2 and presented to us with A1 of the urine ACR categorization, and he has been diabetic for past 10 years. He is not exercising. He is already on 2000 milligrams of metformin per day, 8 milligrams of glimepiride. The clinician adds an EMPA-CETA combination for past 1 year, and still the patient's HbA1c is around 10%, fasting is 202, and the PP is 234. So we very well understand this is an OAD failure patient, and with his hectic schedules, and he is losing musculature through the body composition analysis scaling that we have now, we can clearly understand that adding a drug is not going to help this patient, and his the sleep pattern is very difficult to handle in such patients also, and there we need to add an insulin to give him a better quality of life, as I said earlier. This is what we are facing, the clinical inertia for treating our patients with the right drug at the right time, and then these patients land up into getting an insulin because of improper treatment. So we are actually waiting of just pounding on the OADs, and we start basically with sulfonylureas and metformin in the first place. This has been happening 20, 30 years down the line, but now for past 10 years this should have changed, but still this is what we are lacking. So ADA recommends that basal insulin should be the first line of treatment in such category of patients, where this should be added to salvage them. We have come long way in the progression of insulin synthesization. We very well know Banting Best brought up this beautiful molecule insulin and was a game changer in the life of type 1s who were given the death sentence when they were diagnosed with type 1 DMs. Then insulin preparations which were animal based came into market. The LPH insulins that we were using during our residency days, and in a very, very rare situation of steroid induced hyperglycemia, now we use NPH, otherwise we do not use it. Then the first generation basal analogs came into market with the half-life of 12 to 19 years that we very well use, the Glargine U100 and Detamir. But again, the variability is something which is very important. Not using just an insulin to provide a glycemic control, we also need to have the prevention of glycemic fluctuations or glycemic variability when any patient is coming to us, and that is what has been diagnosed and seen in our day-to-day practice, that just not managing their HbA1c is going to help us. We have to undermine these patients. Even with an HbA1c of 6.4, having nocturnal dips and having hyperglycemia post-breakfast is not going to help these patients. So we wanted a stable control without any fluctuations, and then these ultra-long acting insulins, Degludec U300 Glargine came into market, and they were game changers. They have the half-life of 25 hours with the least glycemic fluctuations. The conventional insulin, NPH insulin, why it is not in that perspective today? Because of the inadequate basal coverage, multiple insulin injections requirement, inter-individual variability, intraday, interday variabilities, variable absorption patterns. We need to resuspend this combination molecule when it comes to us. Again, the risk of hypoglycemia is very much tormenting. With respect to the second thing that came into the market was the first generation basal insulins. Again, because we know the half-life of these molecules, you basically can't call them that only once daily would be a sufficient thing. And it also had a peak. It was not a peakless molecule, and these led to a lot of nocturnal hypoglycemias, which we dread in our typical type 1 diabetic patients a lot. Talking about the PK/PD profile of degludec, as you can clearly see, across 24 hours, it has got a flat profile, a very steady state concentration, and that is because of the formation. It is actually a modified insulin. It is a modified insulin, and along with a combination of zinc. So at high concentration of zinc, it does not precipitate, and it gives a very stable and steady effect. This is to highlight through the data that we have. Now comparing the two gigantic molecules with respect to the ultra long acting insulin, whether you want to use a U300 or you want to use a degludec, as you can clearly see, what they found out was that the within day, that is the intraday variability, was lesser up to the tune of 40% when you're using degludec versus glargine U300, and also the interday variability, which was seen again lesser with degludec versus glargine U100. And the problem with glargine U300 is the precipitation happening. So basically the U100 has been converted into U300, and there is the precipitation and redissolution which is happening, and that is why it can cause some kind of glycemic variability and fluctuations, and these microprecipitate redissolution basically causes this issue. And that is why if you do not want your patients to have much of a variability and specifically nocturnal hypoglycemia, these molecules have slightly an upper edge over the U300. With respect to HbA1c reduction, we have a bright study which also gives us the same uphold, but with respect to the glycemic control, these two molecules don't have much of a difference. Only with respect to a fasting reduction, which was here with degludec versus U300. So not perspective of an HbA1c control, you would choose one molecule above the other, but overall with fasting sugar control, which is better and lesser fluctuations, degludec takes the chart away. And second important thing is, we very well understand, even if you are using a U100 for our patients in day-to-day practice, you would require to increment by 20% when you are using a U300, where there is something, a clinch that you can be again giving degludec the benefit that it requires rather a 20% reduction in the dose requirement, and this is what came up through Bright RCT also. The RSSDI 2022 guidelines also highlights the same, that patients transitioning from U100 to U300 basically require an extra 20% dosage. Lesser risk of hypoglycemia, as we discussed, the variability is lesser, and the dose flexibility. Now in the era of patients who are very choosy, they say you give us something which is very compliant, and now we have the oral preparation GLP, the injectables patient did not like, and now we have an injectable GLP, GIP combinations, and mind you, a lot of patients are actually turning out from the oral GLPs to injectable once a week GLP, GIP, dual agonist also. So similarly, the patients require dosing flexibility. With U100, we wanted to tell the patients you take it dot 10 means dot 10 every day of the same time of the day. You can't make fluctuations on that. With U300, we gave them the window of around 3 hours plus or minus of using 300, but typically patients were executives, shift workers, traveling a lot. Degludec, because of its long activity, around 40 hours, you can actually take, if you skip the dose by any means, you can take it the next day again, or you can take it earlier by 8 hours also. That is again a very tremendous thing, and patients typically, traveling into different time zones, this helps us a lot. Because it has got better glycemic control, lesser fluctuations, obviously the compliance would be better and treatment adherence is also better. So we can use it in diverse populations, whether it is pregnancy, type 2 DMs who require salvage, the elderly population, renal and hepatic impaired patients, type 1 DMs, or for that matter, hospitalized patients with DM. Now, if you're a patient, if you are trying to initiate a degludec to your patients who are type 2 diabetics, and then how would you initiate it? So basically, we know a very common dictum that you can start it by 0.1 or 0.2 unit per kg day, but or you can just start it with 10 units, and based on the fasting algorithms, every doctor now gives an algorithm to a patient. So you give the charge to your patients to make those changes, and you can just have a look on it that if this is the typical range that we want for you to be having a control on, above that specific range, how much +1, +2 units you can make every alternate day, and this is how you try to titrate the dosing of insulin, which is very important. Just initiating it is not going to make a difference. Titrating is very important, and what we have seen in multiple clinical data is also that if you give patient the charge of it, it becomes easier and patients are very compliant. Now, if your patient is already on basal insulin, you can shift to degludec 1:1, but it has been seen that you need to reduce the dose by 10 to 15% as the time passes by. Now, if the patient is taking basal component, basal bolus therapy, then you directly just give the basal dosage as same as the patient was taking the basal component in the basal bolus dosing. With respect to the patient taking glargine U300, 20% reduction of the degludec should be done when you're shifting them to U300 to degludec. So, like just giving an example, typically patients on premix insulin, if you're using that once daily dosage, you typically evaluate and just give the same amount of degludec OD. If the patient is taking basal bolus, so like 20 units of basal and 6 units of bolus in one meal, you can equivalent to 20 units of degludec to that patient. If the patient is, again, as I told you earlier, U300, 14 units, please reduce by 20%. So this patient will be taking 10 units. So this patient was started on degludec. Slowly, the patient achieved the HbA1c control of around 7.6%, and we were able to definitely reduce the dose of sulfonylurea and give their beta cells also some knock-in. Now coming into perspective, even if you have controlled the patient's fasting sugars, you require, sometimes these patients still have postprandial surges. So what next then? There is a requirement of 2 to 3 things. Typically, I am talking about patients who are cachexic, lean, with lean body stature, very dehydrated patients requiring some salvage. Using an AGI is not going to help these patients. So bolus pricks are going to be of the advent. And now talking about the shorter acting insulins, we have the age-old regular human insulin. The problem was with the slower absorption rate, slower onset of action, and had to be given 20-30 minutes prior to meal. Again, not a very compliant molecule to be used, and delayed effect of hypoglycemia. Typically, you want something which should be just like a physiological, profile that a normal individual has. And as you can clearly see from the normal pancreas, how is the insulin being secreted, and this typically is replicated by the ultra fast acting insulins versus the regular insulin, where the curve is going typically not having a stable profile and lasting for a very long time. Now this is actually data taken from ONSET-1 trial, which was done on type 1 diabetic patients, a very interesting trial. This is what we see in our clinical practice basically. So they actually wanted to study the SPART that we had earlier, the NovoRapid, and they wanted to introduce the faster acting SPART, that is FIAS, that we now use in our clinical practice. And what they studied was the conventional SPART versus giving the ultra fast acting SPART, that is the fast acting SPART, just 2 minutes prior to meal or 20 minutes post meal. So this happens with our type 1 diabetics. The children are not very happy eating food right when we tell them, and the quantity is also not very well determined. So even if you're using the fast acting insulin 20 minutes post meal, there are no hypoglycemias, and you get a stable glycemic control. This is what they tried to highlight through Onset 1 trial, which we see through the CGM data that we have for our type 1 diabetic patients, because typically younger type 1 diabetic patients between the age group of 1 year to 9 years, 10 years, they have a lot of fluctuations in their eating patterns, and in these patients, molecules like this help us a lot. So lower risk of delayed hypoglycemia. So typically within 4 hours after meal, 22% lesser risk. Within 2 to 4 hours after meal, 28% lesser risk. So typically, as you can clearly see, the delayed hypoglycemia is very less. So convenient dosing flexibility, as I told you, that is what is needed a day, in any person's life, and the irregular eating patterns, even for the adolescent group type 1 diabetics. They have their peers going along, having some snack, and now they don't know how much they're going to eat, how many burgers they're going to eat, how many dosas they're going to eat. So they can just take it just immediately post meal or till 20 minutes post meal. That is going to be helpful to them. So the conveniency is the key, and these molecules help our patients for the same. So irrespective of the meal timings, these things can be very well addressed. So typically, if we are using a pre-mix combination, it used to become very difficult to control the hypoglycemia problem, and that is what is very well being addressed. This is again a type 2 diabetic, 54-year Suresh, a second case scenario. Now he is in CKD stage 3 with macroalbuminuria also. He's been diabetic for 11 years. His HbA1c is way higher than his recommended HbA1c of around, maybe 7.5%. And this patient is also on gliclazide, metformin, dapalina combination. And typically this patient is also very cachectic, not attaining any control even on these medications. As per RSSDI 2022 guidelines also, that you prefer the co-formulation, which is degludec with an aspart combination versus using other premix insulins for the problem, as we discussed, hypoglycemia and the flexibility that we want for our patients. So the advantage is when you're using a co-formulation, it typically is going to mimic like the physiological insulin response that we want for our patients. There is no shouldering effect. That is something which is very important. So there is no glycemic fluctuations or variability, thereby there is no hypers and hypos for our patients, and it is not required to be reconstituted. And the beauty of this is because the degludec and the aspart is combined in such a way that at high zinc concentrations, they still remain at a very steady state, and there is no intermingling between these molecules. And mind you, in the earlier days, when the company was propagating that it can be given twice daily, I was very skeptical of using it as a twice daily preparation in my patients. But as time passed, typically in typical group of patients, for example, any patient requiring basal usage of more than 0.5 unit per kg, you need to split the dosage. So typically you can take 2 major meals for the patient, and you are using IDEC aspart combination co-formulation, and through the CGM data we saw these patients did not have nocturnal hypoglycemia, and they had very stable the glycemic curves, and the areas on the curves were also very beautiful. Again, the PPG control, we know how it reciprocates, and now we are also looking into the post 1 hour PP control for our patients. And Indian patients typically have a high chunk of PP demonstration on the HbA1c. We want to have a lesser hypoglycemia with good efficacy, and whether it is confirmed hypoglycemia through the SMART study was documenting all the severe hypoglycemia risk, which was quite less as the patient progressed in this study after 12 months of therapy also. So the improved quality of life is that we want for our patients. So the problem here is, as we discussed earlier, so even if you're giving your patients, but I'll just take a few seconds, IDEC aspart as a combination. The beauty is, suppose I'm prescribing my patient IDEC aspart in their major meal, which is the patient's lunch time, but the patient misses it, so he can take it in the dinner time. But again, if he's traveling the next day, he can decide himself which major meal is going to be there, and then he can take the molecule at that time, the insulin at that time, is the beauty of this. So you typically, when you're using it as a OD preparation, you give it with a major meal and you target the fasting as we discussed earlier. But if you're using it as a BD dosage, so for recognizing the proper dosage for, when you're using it in the pre-breakfast or pre-lunch, please check patients' pre-dinner sugars. If you're using it as a pre-dinner preparation, then you check the patient's pre-breakfast and then you make the incremental changes for these patients. So the intensification or titration of the dosing is going to be very, very important. I would just like to summarize that it is an ideal choice in the current scenario with patients not having time for themselves, and we can give them the best by offering such kind of insulins which have a good positive quality of life impact on them and the mealtime flexibility. Thank you for your patient listening.